I'm Christopher Schoenwald, and welcome to Life as a show intently focused on helping people find their professional pathway by exploring and unearthing the details of jobs from around the world. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to throw this out there. I have a channel over on YouTube, Life as a ... which basically hosts highlights from these audio conversations that I have with these great guests. They typically run 10 to 15 minutes, and they're there to kind of present a different vantage point. You know, for people that aren't into audio, aren't into podcasts, but are still looking for career advice, ideas, help, all that great stuff, send them over to YouTube. Like I said, Life as a ... And if you do get over there, I would love that like or subscribe. I mean, it's the best way to let that algorithm know that the content is worth sharing and should be out there. So anyway, I do thank you for letting me plug this a little bit, but I think it's about time to get into today's episode. Without a doubt, one of the defining elements of work life in the 21st century has to be the rise of the creator economy. I mean, that development unto itself has spawned new careers, new modes of working, and new aspirations. In fact, a recent Harris poll I stumbled across shows that a whopping 30% of children aged 8 to 12 want to become YouTubers in the future. And get this, half of US teens aged 13 to 18 aspire to be social influencers. Now, none of this is terribly surprising, but it does kind of illustrate or indicate how times they are a-changin'. Well, in light of this, I figured it was about time I covered someone who has made it in this world. I've got a guest for you today who has put in the time, found his online voice, audience, and topic authority to create his own highly successful lifestyle business. And in this episode, we're going to dive into it all with him, covering how he did it, why he did it, what it was like starting out, and how things are for him now. Most importantly, though, our guest does share some juicy nuggets about what you can do if such a dream is something you want to pursue. Well, perhaps the sensible thing to do now is to simply introduce him to you so we can get this thing rolling. Eric Cogorno is a respected performance golf coach, entrepreneur, and personal development enthusiast. And he's made a career, built a 7-figure business off of being able to intuitively combine the art and science of golf to design seemingly simple strategies that have led to significantly improved performance for golfers of all levels. Now, rewinding a bit, back in 2017, Eric took the experience he gleaned from giving more than 20,000 in-person golf lessons to YouTube. Since then, his distinct style of clear language and simplified concepts have attracted nearly 500,000 followers across his channels, and many millions of views from all across the globe. Now, looking to build on his business, Eric launched CogornoGolf.com in 2018, and now he's on a mission to make world-class golf instruction available to everyone, and through the process, create the biggest and best online golf school in the world. Born and raised in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, Eric was a scratch golfer by the age of 15. He golfed throughout high school and while attending Lehigh University. Further, his accolades have been even featured in Forbes, and he's recognized by Golf Digest as a best-in-state teacher. So with all of this noted, I'd love to welcome you to my conversation with Eric Cogorno.
Yeah, so welcome to the program. How are you doing today, Eric?
Mr. Christopher, all is well, man. Appreciate you having me on and looking forward to a good chat here today.
Absolutely. Like I said earlier in the pre-recording, I enjoyed diving into your background and your work, your story. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, and I'm quite keen to share it with listeners. So yeah, ready to get going here. Speaking of which, I do have this first segment lined up for us today, something called Coloring Wikipedia. And as my listeners know, it's a segment where I just read off a definition of something related to what the guest does. Now, I went with coaching for you, and I'll forewarn you, it's a really basic and pretty straightforward definition, but I'm hoping you fill in the blanks based off your insights, your experiences, and all that stuff. So let me just read that off, and then you can comment. Sound okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, so here we go. Coaching. Coaching is a form of development in which an experienced person, called a coach, supports a learner or client in achieving a specific personal or professional goal by providing training and guidance. Again, we're not breaking any new ground here, but based off of your background, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good, Christopher. I think coaching to me and the role of a coach specifically is to get someone from where they are to where they want to go and really be the guide, along that journey. So for me, all of my coaching experience thus far is golf specific. And that typically follows a couple of roles. Once you meet the person that you're going to help and get a clear understanding of where they want to get to, I think the coach's role is to design the path along the way and then help that person get there. And so that would be an understanding of like, where is that person currently at? Where do we stand today? For me with golf, you would be then diagnosing any potential issues. Hey, here's the top one or two things we need to work on. And then describing the plan of really like what are the first steps. Okay, here's where we want to get to. Here's where we are. Here's maybe our main one or two challenges we're going to work on. This is what we're going to focus on. This is where we're going to put our attention. And then how do we actually start to work on that thing? So for us with golf, that may be drills or whatever the thing is. Hey, these are the things we're going to do. And then, from there, the coach's role, I think, has a couple prongs to it. It's motivation, it's clarity of the vision, it's accountability, for that person when they don't feel like doing those things along the way. So that's a probably longer, maybe not a succinct definition of it, but I think those are the key roles that the coach would play from my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I like that insight there. And of course, how you tie it into your business, in providing lessons, providing support for those who are interested in golfing and improving their game. One thing that stood out to me, and I got this question here, is like for you in, how you got started putting out videos on YouTube and helping people that way. Obviously, that's more of a one-way type conversation or coaching session. You're not directly, sitting down with all of those viewers, of course. So like, how was that initially for you? You're trying to appeal to all, but also understanding that's maybe, that has some inherent dangers to it, I guess is what I'm getting at. What was that like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it was a learning curve, like anything else. I probably spent a decade of my life coaching one-on-one. So one person, just me, very intimate. You
Yeah.
get used to delivering a message to a single person. And yeah, going from that to a mass amount of people. Well, in the beginning, when you launch anything, like our first couple of YouTube videos, maybe 10 people watch. It was still small size, which was nice in the beginning. But taking a message from one-on-one to one-to-many, I learned a lot along the way, but I will say within that, I still always look at the camera. For those listening, like our main shtick is YouTube. So I'm mainly doing like YouTube how-to videos. I still look at the camera and feel as though or think as though I'm speaking to a single person. Like I still have that mantra when I'm doing it. I literally in my mind like tell myself, look at the lens and imagine that's a typical student you would have with whatever the topic is and deliver it to that person. And I find that helps me not get in my head so much of like, oh, what did I say this right or did I say this wrong? And be really focused on the value I'm trying to give, to whoever's listening and realize that while, let's say in a good video, maybe 50,000 people might watch it, it still is 50,000 people, one person at a time. Like it still is just one person that's watching at the other end. And so I try and keep that in mind when delivering it. I think tactically to answer that would be like trying to talk about a topic with all scenarios or different types of people in mind and presenting it less about like, this is the one solution and more like, these are the solutions. And if you're here, option A will probably work best. If you're here, option B. And that certainly was a learning curve along the way. That's a good, cool question.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that insight as well. I mean, I think it's helpful to anyone who is, entertaining this notion of creating an online business and doing it via a platform like YouTube, kind of getting into that zone, as you said, and imagining who you are speaking to. And then that second point of tactically going about it, ensuring that you're covering the bases. Like if this video is for, a wide range of people, who are beginner, intermediate, and high level, well, you're speaking to each person individually in that video, perhaps at different points along the way. Or even maybe, the video itself is geared towards beginners. So, the people that are tuning in for this particular video are all going to be, beginners themselves. So yeah, I like that.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Well, this might be an opportune time to learn a little bit more about your business. I certainly mentioned off the top when I was introducing you, but maybe you could share a little bit more.
Yeah. So like I've been coaching golf. I'm 35 now. I started coaching golf when I was 18. So I started young and really spent the first like 10 years of my professional life trying to get great at the craft of coaching. So like spent all my energy and time on like, how do I get really good at this main thing? So studying golf swing, people, how to, communication, how the body works, everything related to how I could get better at my craft. And fast forward from, 18 to age 28, I got pretty good at doing the in-person coaching thing. I was 28 years old, burnt out, frankly, kind of in a space of like, this is going well. I'm enjoying it. I'm helping some people, but I felt like I could deliver more value than what I was currently doing with just a one-on-one deal. And I was also just tired. I remember thinking to myself, like, gosh, I'm not gonna be able to do this stand outside in the range thing for, the next 30, 40 years. And so there was a multitude of factors that led us to shift things online. We posted our first YouTube video January 1st, 2017. So we're on year 8, I believe, of like golf, how to YouTube videos. And the goal with the posting the videos online was, simultaneously, I wanted to be able to help more people, but also from a business perspective, obviously, for me to be able to scale it from one-on-one, paid per hour to something, bigger recurring revenue I wanted to be able to do. We had to grow our audience. And so we spent, a lot of energy in those first 3 to 4 years, still do now, but how do we just get a bigger audience? Like get more people to know who I am. And when I coached in person, in Bethlehem, PA, if I give myself some credit, maybe a couple hundred people knew who I was in the golf space, like locally. And if I want to build a business to make, more money, I needed thousands of people or tens of thousands, 100,000. So I think we were fortunate at that time, Christopher, of like, it was less crowded in the golf YouTube space in 2016, 17. So we were not first to market, but early, relatively speaking. And so we were able to find a good position, I think, there in the YouTube golf space. And ultimately, you know, things evolved from there and I got really clear on what I wanted to build. We really wanted to build like a lifestyle business. And so we got really clear on revenue goals and how many people we wanted to help. And that led us into membership sites and things we do today.
Okay, so you sort of like just graduated along the way to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. But rewinding right to the beginning and what you started off by saying is like around 18 years old, you already had visions at that point of going that route of coaching. That was something that was already on your mind at that age?
Yeah. And honestly, man, like I wish I had a story that I started coaching because I really wanted to help a lot of people. But if I'm being totally honest, the story goes, I went to Lehigh. It was like a local school, good academic school, okay golf school. This is 2007, 2008. So all the kids that were in the golf program, that were in the finance program, were getting MBAs, were getting six-figure jobs. And then, 2008 happened. And that was my beginning of college. And so I went to school thinking I was going to be a finance guy. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to do finance. I'm going to get my MBA. I'm going to, make six figures all as well in the world. And it was a big eye opener and slap in the face that those same kids that were recruiting me, we're talking within a 3 to 4 month time period is what I remember. It was not a long time period. They were going from having these really good jobs out of school to like literally freaking out, not knowing what they were going to do. And so at that point, I don't know if you've golfed or not before, but at the driving range, there's a guy who picks balls in the range. He drives a little buggy, picks the balls. That's who I was.
Okay.
I'm picking balls out of the range. This is 2007. So I'm making like maybe $6 or $7, whatever minimum wage is, $6 or $7 an hour. And I'll never forget, it was a hot August day. Our range is really bumpy. So like I was out there, it was hot. I'm bumping up and down. I was not having a good time out there. And I pulled this golf cart in on the side of the range. And I'll never forget, I remember it clear as day. There was a golf pro there who's now my good friend Paul, and he had just given a 30-minute golf lesson. And he was teaching this older gentleman. They were kind of laughing it up. They were under this shaded building. They maybe hit like 10 balls in 30 minutes. It didn't seem like a difficult job. And I'm bending over to pick this like 50-pound crate up. I'm sweating, yada, yada. And he made an offhand comment. He's like, I just made $50. Not braggy. He just like, I happened to hear him say, he made $50 giving a 30-minute golf lesson. And I remember standing there thinking, I've got to work 8 hours picking this range to make $50. And he just did it in 30 minutes coaching golf. And so I literally talked to him the next day. I was like, hey, I could do some quick math. This would be a better idea. Can I learn how to coach? And he really, really, really helped me and became my first real mentor and started giving me some lessons. And that's how my golf coaching, in-person coaching career started, which I don't know how deep you do or don't want to get into that. Obviously, there was layers with that. I obviously absolutely stunk, in the beginning of giving in-person coaching, as you do when you start anything.
Of course, yeah.
And me being really bad at those lessons drove that 10-year obsession to kind of study and get obsessed with it and trying to get better at it. And I really, I remember my first year in coaching, I made $7,500, which for me was good at the time. I was like pumped on that.
Yeah.
And then that's 7,500. It just kind of doubled the further. Then went 15 grand the next year, then 30, and then 60. I kind of got capped out at like 80 to 90 grand a year with my in-person coaching. And, when we started doing that YouTube stuff, that's when I had just first got introduced to personal development and Jim Rohn, and did some dream life stuff and goal setting. And that led to what the revenue goals became online.
There you go. A couple things that stand out there, in listening to that story is like, one, in your youth, reflecting on where you're at, and is that satisfying to you or not? Obviously making $6-7 an hour, doing that type of job, it's not where you ultimately want to stay forever. Of course not. But then the second point here is like that individual who was doing something that was appealing to you, having the courage to go up to that guy and speak to him and ask, like, hey, like, can you help me out here? Like, I think that's a big point for youth, like you can have these aspirations, but like it does kind of come down to seeking out a mentor or somebody who can kind of help you out or give you a bit of a guiding pathway or, illuminate that pathway for you to allow you to take that next step. So there's a couple of things that stood out there that I think are useful for listeners. I mean, this is a youth-based program helping people find careers, career ideas and whatnot, but also the tips and strategies for succeeding once they do find something that they're attracted to. It's not just, waiting for it to come to you. You kind of have to go after it. And that's, a big part of your story, at least from what I was gleaning from the research. But I'd also like to transition over to another segment here, a day in the life. Maybe we could return to the present, as far as what you're doing right now, of course, being online, obviously having the YouTube channels, but also being on some other platforms too. And now building your brand and building your business in several different ways. What does a typical day look like for you right now? I'm sure there's several different things you're involved in. You're wearing a lot of different hats, but yeah, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first too, I'll paint a picture of what the past like 7 years day in the life looked like, as we built
Sure.
this thing. I
Yeah.
think that'll be useful. And then we can get to present, you know, especially when someone's starting, for the listeners who are like starting an online endeavor, or like you've got a main thing and you're doing this as a side deal. I think it's really, really important to not stop doing the main thing, until the side thing can replace the main thing. I think that's a mistake I see a lot of people make. And so in the beginning, when we were doing the social media, doing YouTube videos, 2017, I was coaching, full time. Coaching full time looked like, wake up, maybe teach 6 hours a day, sort of in-person lessons. We would try and find a time to film a video. So I've had a partner in this in YouTube who helped do all the filming and editing, Mary, which was super helpful. Another tactical thing, if you can find a way to find people, other who's who can help you do this stuff, that's a big advantage of not just getting it done, but like the accountability to keep doing it when it's difficult. I've had great success with partners on that. So in the beginning, it looked like I still did my main thing, which was coach in person. We would film videos in between. I didn't have to do all the editing and such of those videos, which is to me a big reason why this whole thing worked. So I was like, coach, film. Year one of YouTube and doing this, we got zero traction, essentially nothing. You got to post, your first like 100 videos just to kind of get going, right? So that's year one. And then year two is like still not really making any money online, but now we're starting to get some traction with videos. So people are now wanting to come see me in person for coaching because they saw a YouTube video. So what happens then with some basic supply and demand is I start getting more and more and more and more and more people want to come see me. I only have X amount of hours to fill. So I was able to start raising my prices.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. So I started making money, not directly online, but from the online audience. So that was kind of year two, kind of same thing for year three. And then in year 2, 3-ish, we decided to build our membership site out. So it's a monthly payment where people could send their videos in. We basically do the coaching online. Much less expensive than in person, but the quality is very, very, very good. And so once we did that and started that, then my schedule got very hectic for a couple of years, just very like busy and full. I'm still doing my main full-time job. Then I'm trying to do these online lessons and we're still filming videos. But eventually we got to the point where, we were doing enough online. So that was basically like I would wake up and work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., with some normal breaks in between. It was kind of like that Monday through Saturday. I took Sundays off. That would be like what that looked like then.
Pretty hectic.
And then, yeah, it was like the first couple of years to build the thing for sure were busy, and I knew that and was committed to that going in. But I knew there was light at the end of the tunnel. And my goal with that was like to reduce my in-person coaching time and build a team to handle this new, online coaching to remove my time from it. And so slowly but surely, I started decreasing my coaching hours, from let's say 30 hours a week to 20 to 15 to 10 to 5 to the point where I didn't coach at all for 2 years, which I would have thought you were crazy if you'd have told me that, 10 years ago. And so that's when I learned, a bunch of things that helped me. The book Who Not How by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan about building teams helped me a ton. Highly recommend that read for those listening. And so I started to hire people onto the team as we got more revenue and put people in places, hire other coaches. We hired a full-time editor, a full-time assistant, things like that. And so my schedule from there changed. I spent about 2 years then kind of working full-time on the membership site. So we would do like a free trial offer. So someone would join, I would be their first contact point. I would sort of talk to them in the beginning and handle a lot of the coaching. And so that was pretty full-time. Meanwhile, we're putting out 2 to 3 YouTube videos per week. There's the filming and playing of that. We've got some licensing deals with other companies we're filming for. So that's what I think that sets the stage a little bit better to give you my now answer of like what the now is. Because the now is I've got much more freedom. The now is like my days could look kind of how I want, based on what we decide our priorities are. I spend a lot of energy and I'm big into personal development. So I prioritize my personal development time. That's like going to the gym, reading, personal development videos, meditation, stuff like that. But I would still try and spend like the chunk of my good brain time from like 7 a.m. to noonish on whatever our main priorities are. But that, to be honest, Christopher, I mean, that for me is like, it's relative to what our income goals are. I could right now work probably 1 day a week, if I wanted to and make a good amount of money, but it's like, if we want our revenues to be growing and going higher. So that's the freedom. I think that's at the end of what a lot of people are looking for. Once you get past your like baseline, I've got enough money to live and survive and pay my bills, then to have choices, to work as you want or don't want based on the projects you want to be able to do. So longer answer, but hopefully that paints a picture of what it was like along the way.
100%. I'm glad you brought it up that way too, because I think a lot of times people focus in on that end, position that somebody's in, and they're like, that's what I want. And people almost expect that overnight, So like, even just the way you explained it, like that initial part of your story took up the bulk of your speaking time in answering that question, which is great because it illustrates like there was a lot to that. There's a lot to that to get to this point where you are right now, and I think intrinsically people understand that it takes a lot of hard work, but they underestimate it at different points sometimes, like they expect it all to happen in 6 months or 1 year or something like that. You know what I mean? And obviously, it's going to be different for each individual who maybe entertained this notion or wants to go down that pathway. It could take a year. It could be 2 years. It could be 3. It could be 5 years, right? It really depends on what the person's doing. But being realistic about it, I think, is a key point. So I'm glad that you answered it that way.
Yeah, totally agree, dude. And just to hit on that, like I think the tactics there that have helped me with that are to set really long-term goals.
Yeah.
My first goal setting thing I did, so these were set at like age probably 30. I'm kind of 5 years into my 10-year goals. Mm-hmm. When you set a 10-year goal, inherently the goal is based on there being time,
Yeah.
And then you can always chunk that down into, okay, to get that 10-year, this is my 5, this is my 3, this is my 1, this is my monthly, my 90-day, my weekly. I think that has helped me as much as anything else. The thing that changed the game for me was having clarity on what my dream life looked like and setting 10-year goals. That sits by itself.
Yeah.
And then underneath that is the longer term thinking. And also when you set a 10-year goal, that can be humongous. Like if you think about what you could do in 10 years, it's almost, anything. Mm-hmm. If you ask me what I could do in 90 days, there'd have to be some logistics involved.
Right.
Like, okay, what could I reasonably move around? But if you said, dude, 10 years from now, like 10 years from now, you could probably do anything. And then with that, there comes patience of like, okay, within that 10-year goal, this first thing is going to take me 3 years. This is going to take whatever. And I also think, dude, with setting longer term things, that helped a lot is inevitably along the way, nothing for me has gone exactly to plan. Everything's been way more difficult and taken way longer than I initially anticipated.
Hmm.
But because there's a grace period with a goal being long enough from now, I think that really helps too, stay on track versus the like, I didn't hit 1 million subscribers in 90 days. Well, no, but like, what if your goal is hit 1 million in 20 years? And then like, would that still get you, kind of where you want to be able to go? So I think
Yeah.
that could be a tactical thing that can help too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you threw that in there. I think that's great insight. Well, I would like to step into yet another segment of Q&A discovery. We can continue this back and forth. And I've got this question here in terms of like you yourself combining, your passion early on, that being golf, with a business, with a lifestyle. I mean, what was that, or what is that like? I can imagine that being wonderful in a lot of respects, but I also understand that there could be challenges associated with that as well. Maybe you could speak to both of those points.
Yeah. So, for me, I got really clear on what I wanted my life to look like as an
Yeah.
exercise. And I think for 28 years of my life, I did a lot of things. I never specifically sat down and spent time thinking about that or writing it down. Maybe I've had vague things go through, like, oh, it'd be nice to have a Ferrari or this, that, but never like clear, like, this is my plan. This is what I want to be able to do. And when I came across my first, you ever watch any Jim Rohn stuff?
Back in the
Do you
day,
know
yeah,
who
I
he
haven't.
is at all? So, man, for me, he he says so many things. For those listening who haven't watched any Jim Rohn, I cannot recommend him highly enough. He's become more popular recently on Instagram and TikTok, which has been interesting. But if you can watch Jim Rohn's things, he says things that are so simple but so impactful at the same time. And when I got turned on to him and I did that dream life thing and I sat down and got clear on like what would an ideal life look like again in like 10 years? Not tomorrow, not next year, but like 10 years from now. If I no logistics involved, what would it look like? And so we really designed our business around that. Like how much money would it cost to be able to live like that? Where would I want to live? Who do I want to spend time with? What specifically do I want to do with my time? What impact do I want my work to have? What does my workday look like? Where am I doing it? How do I feel? And like getting really, really clear on those things for me makes everything else easier along the way. I didn't know how we were going to get any of those things initially, but I think the path reveals itself as you continue walking in the direction that you want to be able to head. So like when I look back on my things that I set, hey, I want this to take things online. I want to have this lifestyle business to your question. I am now like living in the dream stuff that I used to think about 5 years ago,
Yeah.
which is amazing, amazing to me. It didn't all happen exactly how I thought, but it all, has come to fruition. Now, I spend time every day thinking and visualizing about that. Like I spend a lot of time in visualization and meditation, a lot being like 15 minutes a day. So I put in my mind, like the work, not just in the beginning to get clear on it, but the work every day to like redefine and reclarify for me what I want, like why I want it and the emotions attached to it. And so that has made the process for me, I don't know if easy is the right word because that might paint a wrong picture, but that has made the process very clear and certain for me amongst the like daily or weekly troubles that we would have. So I'm not sure if that directly answers your question, but those were the thoughts that came
Yeah,
to
yeah,
mind
yeah.
there.
In terms of the golfing side, that being a big passion of yours and obviously like fueling this entire business, what has it been like for that? Like, do you think of golf in the same way as what you did when you were 15, 16, maybe even 10, 12 years
Mm.
old? I mean, like that's something I would love to hear a little bit more about, like now it's directly tied into what you're just speaking of, like your dreams, your future, your life, the way you want it. Whereas before, maybe it was just going out to the range and there was a certain purity of just hitting the balls around. Now there's a whole lot more
Mm.
attached to it. What is it like combining your passion in that sense?
That's a great question. Golf for me in the beginning was a game. It was a pastime. It was a challenge. It was a fun sport. And then I think when for me at least, the experience has been when I turned that into a job where I was getting paid to do it. For me, the perspective changed a lot. And there's been stages to that for sure. But I guess when there's a money exchange, but I have to go do something whether I feel like it or not. That's how I'll define, like, let's define that as like a job. So, when I was younger and playing golf, I'd be like, if I feel like going to play golf, I'll play. If not, I won't. But then when you're teaching, you're like, hey, I got to go every day, do this no matter how I feel. I've got to deal with people. Some of them are easy to, some of them are not easy to. And so, there's been times where that my love for the game itself or my passion certainly decreased dramatically at points, and then it comes back and then it goes away. And so I think, when people say you find something you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life, even if you have something that you love doing, I think there's parts of that, whatever percentage we can probably debate that are like, there's going to be some that you're not going to like, even if you love the main thing. Yeah. Like I didn't love collecting money. I didn't love like people I had to deal with, when I was doing it. So yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's definitely changed my relationship with it. I think I would enjoy the game more like I used to if I didn't work in it. But to me, it has evolved into a tool that on one hand helps me help a lot of people, which is kind of what my main priority for my work has become, is like, what impact can I make with what I'm doing? And then it also drives this financial vehicle to, like, for me to live the dream life that I want to. And so, yeah, I guess what started out as an innocent, fun game then has become sort of a life defining thing for me. And I don't know that it ever could go back to what it was, the innocence of what you have in the beginning, but that's also the beauty of it. I think that's also the beautiful part of the process.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of sprang to mind when you're just laying it out that way? It's like it's almost like a relationship with that passion itself. You know what I mean? Like it becomes refined, it develops, it grows over time. Like you just said, you're not going to return to that point, but it's growing, it's continually evolving and shifting and changing, and you kind of just have to appreciate that over the journey and what it represents now and what it could represent to you later on. So yeah, I just found that to be kind of an interesting insight, because a lot of people do talk about finding a passion and then turning it into a business. Well, inherently that is going to change your relationship with that passion in some way. Now, I have this other question as well here in terms of, you and your business and growing it out on these different platforms, mainly YouTube, but also Instagram, TikTok as well. I think you're up to over 500,000 people, at least from the research that I was doing. Clearly, those numbers, they're not going to hurt when you're building an online business and having that business run successfully. So for listeners who are interested in one day, maybe even getting close to those numbers, or even something maybe even less than that, but like, how would you go about giving advice to somebody who has aspirations such as that, who wants to leverage, social media to grow their brand or to help accentuate whatever they're doing online?
Yeah, another great question. Lots of thoughts there. I think to put them into something manageable, how we started was with me saying that I spent like 10 years getting great at the thing first. And I don't think you can skip that. It doesn't have to be 10 years. If you're trying to grow a social and socials online, being great at whatever you're talking about or your content's about, if that's not the base of the plan, I don't think it's difficult to work around that. I guess let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Which also means that if that's true and you are great at the thing you do, let's say for me, golf coaching, let's say so you're a real estate agent or whatever you do, that's got to be the base of everything. All of the tricks and tips I have, like I love talking about the details of the thumbnails and the titles and the hooks and the watch time, but that is all secondary to like whatever you're giving them in the video. The meat of it has got to be good. That's why you see someone like Alex Hormozy, who has blown up online. I watched one of his first videos when he first came out. It's the first YouTube video I ever commented on because I was so blown away. He was in a closet talking on his phone, and the content was so good. He built $100 million business because he was great. Now he added things to it. He added the team, he added the titles, he added all this other stuff. And I think that's just got to be a secondary thing. So my first piece of advice is you have to be great at the thing you're doing. You can build your socials while you're doing that. I don't think it has to be one before the other, but it has to happen, and maybe it can happen at the same time. That means like spending an ample amount of time studying whatever your thing is and getting good at that thing. The next thing I would say is that you have to treat the posting and stuff on social media like it is a thing you're going to do for a decade and prioritize it. So we filmed our YouTube videos every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the past 8 years. No matter what, that's on the calendar. It's blocked out. It's how we start our week because it's a priority. I spend, 2 to 4 hours every Sunday before we film Monday, prepping for the videos, coming up with topics, titles, etc. Every week, 8 years. So you have to put that. It's got to reflect that in your calendar. Like, this is a priority. This is where it's going to go in there. That'd be my second recommendation. The third thing is that if you're trying to do it by yourself and you lack a skill that's going to hold you back, recording, editing, thumbnails, whatever, try and figure out how to find other people who are great at that to help you. That can be paid through something like a Fiverr. That can be a partner like I did RevShare with. I would rather have a portion of something that exists than, like, if I tried to do it by myself, I would have quit. It was like too difficult. So find a partner or people to help the best you can. Those are a couple things. I got a list of about 20. Maybe I'll give you like one or two more. But prioritizing on the schedule. And then, you model success. So you don't have to recreate the wheel when it comes to social media. You have to look in your marketplace at the audience that you want to get attention from, and see who's getting attention in that marketplace. And you don't copy, but you model. What are the topics they're talking about? How do they start their videos? What are the titles? What do the thumbnails look like? How long are the videos? What are the comments? I used to read through all the comments on all the golf videos and use valuable stuff in there, what people would say. So I would model success with it. And then the last point I'll give, well, maybe 5 out of the 20, is I look at the first 100 videos as just a get your foot into a practice thing. Like, we're starting a new personal development channel. And it's like, this first 100 videos, no emotion attached to it. Doesn't matter how many people watch. Just literally get in the habit of filming now, posting now, and learning as you go. And as you're focusing on just getting good at the skill, then you can shift to, like, okay, how do we build our audience? How do we monetize and all that sort of stuff? But until you have 100 videos up, you certainly shouldn't be thinking like, oh, I'm going to post these videos and have some good traction from it. Like, I would plan for at least the first 100. So those are a couple ones.
Yeah, I like that. A dose of, realism to it all, and kind of like layering your expectations a little bit there, at least initially. Yeah, I think that's helpful advice, no doubt. Now, in terms of like building authority in that space, I think that can be intimidating for a lot of people. And you've kind of answered that to the point of like really focusing on the craft itself and ways of doing that and building your own skill set to be able to communicate that to others. Now, any particular insights or direct advice you would have for ways of doing that? Like, once you have devoted some of that time, like what from your experience, what works? As far as reaching people, as far as connecting with people, once you do have a certain degree of cachet or skill or knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good one, dude. Like, building authority probably could have been in that first 5, like being seen as the expert in your space. So ultimately proof.
Yeah.
Right? Proof would be the easy answer there. Now, proof can come in the form of, hey, I'm Alex Hormozi. I built a $100 million business. That's nice proof. Proof could be like you showing clients or things that you're actually accomplishing as you're doing it. So let's use me as a golf coach, for example, showing like authority in the space and people wanting to listen to me. I could show me doing a live lesson and like me actually doing the coaching, the person actually improving. I could show clients that I work with the process, them actually working. So I think proof is a good one. And then there's some like more micro stuff to me, which be like how you speak, the confidence that you speak with, how you look into the camera, how you present yourself is a big one. The same way, like when you meet someone, you can tell pretty quickly, if they are an authority in what they're doing or not. If I go sit down with someone and have a meeting with them, you could tell within pretty quickly how they shake your hands, how they look in your eyes, how they speak to you. So that same stuff comes off on camera, And so I would offer the proof up front. Like, hi, I'm Eric Cogorno. I've been coaching golf for the past 15 years. I've given over 20,000 golf lessons. In today's video, we're going to talk about blah, 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 blah. Okay, that helps. Or if I don't have that yet and I'm just starting, like, hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to show you this. This is I'm going to show it to you. And I've got Rick with me. He's going to be our student today. We're going to guide you through the process. So, okay, hey, he actually does know what he's doing in there. I think those would be helpful for someone to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing too that stands out in listening to you explain all this is like there's no shortcuts. No shortcuts to any of this. It's hard work, it's dedication, it's putting in the effort to do all this. And obviously like some tactical elements and strategy attached to it all. But a lot of this is coming down to some hard work and dedication towards the cause, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think that's a big part of it as well. And to add on to that, I would say probably like, some of the soft skills or different approaches to it that, probably play into this a lot. Courage, having the courage to do some of these things, to be willing to take some risks, not be afraid to fail a little bit. Failures, you're going to learn a heck of a lot more in that episode, than anything else, I'm sure. But I'd love to hear about some of these other elements, maybe something like that, like how courage has played a big role, or perseverance, or some of these other things that have, played to your success.
Yeah, I love that. So, that's a big thing for me, Christopher, of like, I was like a scared kid, a lot of anxiety, a lot of social anxiety. And so for me, learning how to overcome fear and some of the strategies involved with that have been huge. Let's say courage is like feeling fear and doing the thing anyway.
Yeah.
Let's say what that is, right? So I used to have the false mindset of like courage was like not having any fear. But what I found is it's not about not having fear. It's about having the fear and doing the thing anyway. And so even just that redirect or reframe in my mind helped me a ton. I've found that stepping through the fear is a lot easier when there's clarity in where I'm heading in the first place. Like sometimes I know I can be boring with some of this because it all leads back to that clarity of those like big picture, long-term things. But it really is. It's like I can redirect that fear into like, okay, why do I want to do this in the first place? Okay, that's linked to this. I want this. These are the emotions attached. This is why I want it. And so that helps. I think it's harder to do the things and overcome fear with no clarity on the direction I want to head in and why it's important. So that would be kind of the first thing that I would look at. The second framework I would use would be like, what's that fear coming from? Like fear for me would come from, especially doing videos, like how am I going to look? Do I sound okay? Do I really know what I'm talking about? Should I even be doing videos in the first place? Like, am I an expert in this thing? And so I would reframe that in, a couple of different ways too, of like, no one cares how I look, how I sound, and all that sort of stuff as much as I'm building it up in my head. 99% of people don't care at all. And the people that do don't care nearly as much as I'm thinking that they do. In fact, I think a lot of people are rooting for you, not all the people that leave the troll comments, but really a lot of the people who are rooting for you along the way. So I would frame it that way. I also think, dealing with the things get easier as you continue on, like dealing with the fear of doing video 1, it's easier to do video 20, video 100's even easier, video 1500's even easier. And so it'll never be as hard as it is on that first one. But to get to video 100, you got to do video 1. You got to do video 2, And so I still think, though, at like the core of it, what makes it easier to handle and keep stepping in that direction is reminding yourself why you're doing it in the first place. That would be where I would start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of gives you some freedom as well. I mean, if you have that 10-year goal attached to it and you mess up one of those videos, I mean, the grand scheme of things, that's not really going to knock you off course. Okay. You learn something from it. You return to where you're at and you try something different, like I think it gives you that freedom. It kind of, eases up your mind a little bit, when it comes to that. So yeah, I like that.
I want to add to that, if you don't mind, Christopher.
Sure,
That's a great point. Another frame that I would use a lot to that exact point is like, I always am looking at this stuff as just practice along the way, because the goals are so far out. It's like this performance right now in year 2 of a 25-year goal, I'm just practicing getting better anyway. That is a great, great, great point.
Well, I do have another segment here that I'd like to step into, a water cooler story segment. And here I just, invite guests to share a story, with listeners, something related to their profession, something related to the work that's meaningful to them. So I'm quite keen to hear what you have for us today, Eric.
The thing that I think would be I'm going to root back to this most impactful thing that happened to me. So, when we were first starting our journey, I was doing my in-person lessons. And, at that point in time, I used to give one-on-one lessons, but I also had this group of, maybe 30 kids that I would coach. We did this like big group golf lesson. And I would have music playing and the kids were, were characters and funny and stuff like that. And who my now business partner is. This is how like things tie together at the same time. My now business partner, Mary, who I've worked with now for 8 years, just happened to sign up and come in for a golf lesson and happened to walk through. And her lesson was right after this group practice. And she saw all these kids and was like, Eric, you have, there should be like, she has a PR background. She's like, Eric, you should have like a show here. There's like a golf show or something to happen. And I was like, gosh, it is so funny you say that because I'm literally thinking about like starting this YouTube channel. And right before she had come up and had mentioned that to me, I had just started to see some people online. Like this was like early Grant Cardone, Gary Vaynerchuk, guys that were talking about building online social media and stuff like that. Just had like come across them and started watching their videos. I kind of bought into it. I was like, I'm going to do this YouTube thing. I bought this Sony camera. This had to be 2016. And I don't know anything about technology at all for a guy who does YouTube. I like literally had the hardest time turning this thing on. I couldn't get it to record a video. Like that's where I was at the time. So I'm like, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to do this YouTube thing. I tried to record a video, it didn't work. I end up meeting her probably a month later. She happens to randomly schedule a lesson like right after this group time. Could have been any other time, would have never seen it. She happened to just finish her work project and had a PR background. And at the same exact time, probably like maybe a week and a half beforehand, my friend texts me this Tony Robbins video. It's a YouTube video. And I checked this video and I had it on, played in the background. It didn't really like move me or do much for me at the moment. But in the little thing on the recommended thing on the side was a Jim Rohn image. And I clicked on that. And that Jim Rohn video that I clicked on was that goal setting workshop that completely changed my life. And so I went from deciding I was going to do social media, buying a camera, not being able to figure it out, quitting, to a series of events to a month later, meeting the person who I would then, create this YouTube channel with, create all this revenue with, create my dream life with. And so I think it's being open to like the potential and the opportunities around you and allowing some of those things to go a little bit deeper on this. Again, like I said to you, like I spent a lot of time thinking about the things that I want. People might call it manifesting or visualizing. And it is unbelievable to me how things seem to appear and people seem to appear when I'm like aware of it. And so the decision to do the thing and then wanting to quit, I was days away from meeting my then business partner who I'd spend the next decade with. So I think if someone's listening and they might be, find themselves in the same sort of hard spot at the moment, you could be literally one meeting, one person, one day away from meeting the who, the what, the where that could completely change your life.
Yeah, I love that. I think some people might interpret that as a bit of serendipity, like to a certain extent where like, oh, just, a bit of luck here and there. But it's that point that you raised. It's like this openness to different ideas and some self-reflection along the way of where you're at, what's lacking, what you need maybe. And I think that opens up a whole different world of possibilities for you, is that, like that openness to speak to somebody about this, or maybe, again, returning that point of courage, like, well, I'm having a tough time with this. Could you help? Do you have any insights on this? Like, I think it all sort of like comes together and plays into something where, again, if you're willing to go for it, the world's your oyster, really. There's a lot out there that can be done. It just really kind of comes down to combining a lot of these elements that we've been speaking about, during this conversation. So I appreciate you sharing that story there. We are rounding the bend, though, into this last segment here, something called a crystal ball segment. As the name implies, we're looking towards the future, trends, predictions, so on and so forth. And, clearly technology plays a major role in your business and what you're doing online right now. And I'd love to hear a little bit about some of these tools that have been helpful to you in growing your business out. I think that'd be, excellent insight for listeners who are interested in perhaps doing something similar to what you've, managed to do.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I haven't been huge into the AI revolution like a lot of my friends. I hear about how some of my friends are using AI and it absolutely blows me away. Now, keeping in mind, I'm the guy who couldn't turn on the camera.
Yeah.
Like, that's the level that I'm at here with this. I think what I see certainly for us and moving forward, in particular in the social space, I think it's going to be easier and easier and easier for people to get into these social spaces, being able to film, the editing, the amount of time that we spend editing a video. Like for those that don't do that, it is an amazing amount of work that will be reduced dramatically. Huge opportunity. Like that is a barrier for people to succeed in my mind on places like YouTube is the editing that's needed. I think that will go away. I think the tools that we see, like with a simple iPhone, will continue to improve to the point where like the tools you need for yourself to grow great socials will continue to get reduced, which is incredible news for everyone listening that wants to be able to grow those. I still think that said, even though the pool of people doing it will be bigger, the greatness will still rise to the top. Those who are the best at the thing will still win. So I don't want to work over that part. The speed of which things are going and happen and get done continues to get faster and amaze me. It's such a fine line. Because maybe this is for a conversation for another day. I'd be curious to gather your thoughts too. It's like the people who I surround myself with who achieve a lot and do better than me go fast. They go faster than me. They make fast decisions. They get things done fast. They move faster. And technology allows the speed to increase exponentially. And so speed of doing things, I think now versus 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago, is a factor you have to keep more in mind while simultaneously having long-term visions in mind, but getting short-term things done extremely fast and using technology, I think, to be able to help with that. And then I think lastly, the thing I'm curious about as TikTok has come along and the algorithms have evolved that I've seen on Instagram and YouTube for short form, our medium form content on YouTube still does well. And then there's this short term revolution of things and there's long term. And I'm very curious to see over the next decade how both of those things work in unison. And I think for those that are looking to grow socials, you do need to be intentional about which one of those directions you want to be able to go into. And I think that as things evolve and the technology that we have will make the short form and medium form very easy. I think the long form, or especially the short term, very easy, I should say. Medium form still kind of normal, but the long form, I think then becomes there's less players who are good in that space, which to me means opportunity. I think more and more and more and more people are going to get really good at already a 30-second clip, a 60-second clip, a 90. That's going to be easy to do. It's like, can you do a 90-minute thing really well? And so that's kind of where my thoughts are at for like where we want to go in the next 5 to 10 years of trying to own that medium 10 to 20 minute, because I still think you'd be good for that. But like to produce something that's 90 minutes in my mind now, you're going to need to be great, and there's going to be less people trying to do it, which I think is an opportunity. Could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun to speculate, and it's fun to look into that crystal ball and pontificate a little bit on where things could go. And I like those points again that you're raising of linking this all back to goals. And like having like long-term goals and then kind of breaking them down into this medium and short term. And I think as you said, technology plays a big role in this and speeding things up. It's certainly going to be a great help, a great assistance. And also too, I think this point, and something that comes up with a lot of different guests on this program at least, is like with the advancement of technology, it's going to make things much easier, but it's also going to kind of come back to that individual in terms of some of the soft skills, like we were speaking about earlier. Courage to do things, courage to take smart, calculated risks, the emphasis on creativity, curiosity, and seeking out new ways or continually learning and upping your game and allowing you to tactically go about these things to take advantage of these tools. Because the tools on themselves aren't going to do anything for you unless you have some sort of like, again, end goal for where you'd like to see them take you. And I think that's a big part of all of this, where sometimes people just get fixated on the latest gadget. Okay, well, I can do this with it. Yeah, you can. But if it's not all aligned with a vision of some sort, you're going to have a tough time. And I think you're going to struggle. And that was something that was kind of coming across, throughout this conversation and what you just shared there. So I really appreciated that.
And just a quick add on too. Sometimes you bring up points after we talk about something that like we could probably go on for like another 30 minutes on.
I think so, yeah.
I think what you said is so true too, where technology and even life now, it's so easy to do a lot literally on your phone at home where you don't need to communicate with people, which I would always look at those and look at the opposite frame and say, like, what opportunities does that provide? Things like the soft skills, like you said, That then makes it so much more valuable for those who can go communicate in person well and do the other things outside of what can I do? Like do the technology as well, do the phone, take advantage of it.
Hmm.
But if you are someone who can do that and also have those soft skills along with it, be able to communicate well in person, present yourself well, that then provides another really, really good opportunity for a lot of people who are going to grow up and spend a lot of time not spending time building those skills.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love, what you just shared there. I think that might be a nice, bow on this entire conversation. It's flown by. I can't believe we're approaching the hour mark here, but I can't thank you enough, Eric. I know listeners are absolutely going to love this. And yeah, I know you're going to give them tons of insights, tons of tips, tons of strategies for them to get started. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I appreciate you having me on. This was great. Love the episodes, love the conversation. If anyone listening hasn't watched Jim Rohn and the goal setting workshop, please, please, please go watch that. I think you'll really enjoy it. Thanks, Chris.
Now, for those interested in learning more about Eric and his work, you can find him on Instagram, TikTok, and of course, YouTube. Also, he has his personal website, cogornogolf.com. And for reference, all of this information, including the links, will be in the show notes. And hey, if you like today's show, please be sure to tell a friend and share. To show further support, you can always rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. And then, as I mentioned off the top, head on over to YouTube. I do have that channel over there, which hosts highlights from these audio recordings. If you do make it over there, I would absolutely love a like or subscribe. And then finally, don't forget to join us on the next episode of Life as where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. Until next time, stay curious about life and living.